That car is junk." The laughter echoed across the executive parking lot, sharp and careless, slicing through the cold morning air. Dozens of polished luxury cars gleamed under the rising sun, Bentleys, Teslas, and a sleek black Rolls. But in the far corner sat a faded, dented, cherry-red 1967 Mustang with peeling paint and a hood that didn't quite close. And beside it stood Daniel Brooks, janitor, single father, and the man everyone thought had nothing. Victor Langston, the company's powerful CEO, adjusted his Italian suit and smirked as he circled the Mustang like it was a museum piece of failure. "You actually drive this thing," he laughed, loud enough for his board members to hear. "Daniel, this car belongs in a scrapyard." The executives chuckled. Daniel didn't. He gently wiped dust from the Mustang's hood as if it were something alive. "It still runs," he said quietly. Victor scoffed, barely. What no one knew was that the Mustang was the only thing Daniel had left of his late wife, Hannah. They had restored it together in their small garage years ago when money was tight but dreams were big. After cancer took her, Daniel kept the car, not because it was valuable, but because it was sacred. And every night after cleaning floors in the $2 billion tech company where he worked, Daniel worked on that engine. Alone. Daniel's days were long. He woke before sunrise to make breakfast for his 8-year-old son, Caleb. He braided his daughter Lily's hair badly, but lovingly. He walked them to school before heading to Langston Dynamics, where he scrubbed toilets in the same building where billion-dollar ideas were born. The engineers barely noticed him. The executives never looked at him. But Daniel noticed everything. For years, Langston Dynamics had been chasing a breakthrough, a next-generation hydrogen engine that could revolutionize clean energy. Investors were losing patience. Deadlines were collapsing. Millions had already been poured into research with little success. And while executives argued in glass-walled conference rooms, Daniel listened. He listened while emptying trash cans. He listened while mopping floors. He listened because before life had knocked him down, Daniel Brooks had been a mechanical engineering student, top of his class, until hospital bills forced him to quit school to care for Hannah. Dreams were expensive. Survival came first. One night, while polishing the executive floor, Daniel overheard Victor yelling at his lead engineer. "It's unstable at high compression," the engineer insisted. "Then fix it," Victor snapped. "I didn't hire you to fail." Daniel froze. Unstable at high compression. That was the same issue he'd been solving in his garage. Because Daniel wasn't just restoring an old Mustang. He was rebuilding its engine from scratch, experimenting with hydrogen combustion on a small scale, using salvaged parts and textbooks he'd bought secondhand. Every paycheck after rent and groceries went into that engine. Every spare minute, every drop of exhaustion fueled it. Weeks passed after the parking lot humiliation. Daniel kept his head down. But one evening, as he turned the ignition in his garage, something different happened. The engine didn't cough. It didn't shake. It purred. Smooth, controlled, powerful. Hydrogen burned clean inside a system Daniel had redesigned himself. A modified chamber structure that stabilized high compression by redirecting airflow through a secondary microvalve system he'd improvised from junkyard parts. It worked. Tears filled his eyes. "Mom would have loved that sound," Caleb whispered from behind him. Daniel smiled. "She would have." The next day, Langston Dynamics announced catastrophic news. Their prototype engine had exploded during testing. Investors threatened to pull out. Stocks plummeted. Victor was furious. Blame rippled through the company. Layoffs were rumored. And janitors are always the first to go. That night, Daniel made a decision that terrified him more than losing his job. He requested 5 minutes with the CEO. The assistant laughed. "You're the janitor." "I know," Daniel replied calmly, "but I can fix his engine." The audacity of the statement traveled upward like wildfire. Victor agreed, not because he believed Daniel, but because he needed someone to mock. The boardroom was silent when Daniel walked in wearing his cleaning uniform. Victor leaned back in his leather chair. This should be entertaining. Daniel swallowed hard. He wasn't afraid of humiliation anymore. He'd survived worse. "I've been studying your hydrogen instability problem," Daniel began. The engineers shifted in annoyance. "You've been what?" Victor interrupted. "Listening," Daniel said, "and working." He placed a small metal component on the table, a handcrafted compression stabilizer valve. "This redirects excess pressure during peak combustion," Daniel explained. "It prevents the microfractures that caused your last explosion." One engineer frowned. "That's impossible, we tried." "You tried a fixed system," Daniel replied respectfully. "This adapts in real time." Victor's smirk faded. "Where exactly did you test this miracle device?" he asked coldly. Daniel met his eyes. "In my Mustang." Laughter almost erupted again, until Daniel continued. "You can come see it." That afternoon, the entire executive team stood in Daniel's modest neighborhood, staring at the same junk Mustang Victor had mocked. Daniel turned the key. The engine roared to life, steady, powerful, clean. No rattling. No smoke. No instability. The lead engineer's jaw dropped as he examined the setup. This solves the compression spike." Victor's face had gone pale. "You built this here?" he asked quietly. Daniel nodded. "After my kids went to sleep." Silence hung heavy. For the first time, Victor didn't see a janitor. He saw a mind. Within weeks, Daniel was moved into the engineering department as a consultant. Skepticism followed him, but results silenced critics. His adaptive stabilizer design became the foundation of Langston Dynamics' new hydrogen engine. Investors returned. Stocks surged. 2 years later, the company unveiled the world's first commercially viable high-compression hydrogen engine. Valuation: $2 billion. During the global press conference, Victor stood behind the podium. Cameras flashed. Journalists waited. He cleared his throat. "Today's breakthrough would not exist without a man I once underestimated." Daniel stood backstage, uncomfortable in a tailored suit. Victor continued, voice steady but humbled. "A man who reminded me that brilliance doesn't wear a title. It doesn't park in the front row. Sometimes it drives a beat-up Mustang." The audience laughed softly. Victor gestured. "Daniel Brooks." Applause thundered as Daniel walked onto the stage. But Daniel didn't talk about revenge. He didn't talk about humiliation. He talked about his wife, about unfinished dreams, about how grief can either bury you or build you. He talked about listening when no one thinks you matter, and about believing in yourself when the world laughs. After the conference, Victor approached him privately. "I was wrong," he admitted. Daniel smiled gently. "We all miss things when we only look at the surface." Victor glanced at the Mustang, now restored and shining. "Is it still junk?" Daniel chuckled. "No, it's potential." Years later, when Daniel drove Caleb to his first engineering internship interview, the Mustang still purred like a promise kept. Because the truth is this: people will laugh at your rust. They will mock your dents. They will judge your position. But they cannot see your engine. And when it finally starts, when it roars to life powered by perseverance, sacrifice, and faith, the same world that laughed will stand and applaud. Never let someone else's title define your worth. Sometimes the janitor holds the blueprint. And sometimes the junk car starts a $2 billion revolution.